Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm John King. Thanks for sharing some time with us today. It's a busy first Monday for President Trump, who is making jobs and trade an immediate focus as he opens a week of executive actions focused on getting some of his biggest campaign promises.
We want to start making our products again. We don't want to bring them in, we want to make them here.
Also today, an ethics group filing a lawsuit against the new president, arguing he has not done enough to wall himself off from business conflicts and foreign influence. And we will see whether this afternoon's second Trump White House briefing is as surreal as the first. Most of what the press secretary said Saturday was simply not true. But the new administration, get this, has a new term for not telling the truth.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that.
Brace for it, parents of America. Alternative facts when you catch your kids doing whatever. Okay, with us to share their reporting and their insights, CNN's Sarah Murray, Ed O'Keefe of The Washington Post, CNN's Madhu Raju, and Karen Tumulty of The Washington Post. It is President Trump's first full work week at the White House, and brace yourself for a lot of action. Just a short time ago, the president signed an executive order to withdraw the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's a massive trade deal corporate America loves, but a deal the new president says hurts American workers.
All right, we're going to sign 3 memorandums right now. The first one is withdrawal from the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Everyone knows what that means, right? We've been talking about this for a long time. Thank you. Okay. Great thing for the American worker, what we just did.
Next, a federal government.
That was the president just moments ago. Earlier this morning, a roundtable with business leaders at the White House where the president brought both carrots and sticks. He promised massive corporate tax cuts are coming, but also issued a warning to companies that shut down operations in the United States and move jobs elsewhere.
A company that wants to fire all of its people in the United States and build some factory someplace else and then thinks that that product is going to just flow across the border into the United States, that's not going to happen. They're going to have a tax to pay, a border tax, a substantial border tax. Now, some people would say that's not free trade, but we don't have free trade now because we're the only one that makes it easy to come into the country.
So first Monday on the job, a bit of a rocky weekend. We'll get to that in a moment. But in terms of the first Monday, bringing in business leaders, wants to talk about manufacturing, wants to talk about jobs, warns them about trade. Some Republicans don't like that, but it warns them about the border tax. Then signing this order again. The corporate America likes the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Donald Trump says it's one of those trade deals that screws the little guy. What do we make? Focus on big campaign promises.
If Donald Trump can stay on the issues today and Sean Spicer can avoid having another meltdown from the podium during the White House briefing, I think this is a very good day for Donald Trump. This is an opportunity for them to go out and say a major criticism of Barack Obama was that he did not have an open channel of communication with the business community or with members of Congress. We're doing both of those, setting the tone for that on the first day. And in addition to that, we're meeting with union members and union leaders to say, hey, a lot of your guys voted for me. They helped me get here, and we want to be talking to you, too. The question with Donald Trump's himself, his advisors, his administration, as it always is can they be disciplined? And can they stick to the things that people voted them in to do? Or are they going to get distracted by these sort of side battles?
I continue to believe, look, if you look at what's been done and what he vowed to do and what he just did in the last few minutes, it's all classic Republican, policy and promises fulfilled. He has now pulled out of the TPP, which is going to upset parts of his party, but became a popular rallying cry. He's put a freeze on federal employee hiring, which is something Ronald Reagan did on day one back in 1981. And then once again imposes the Mexico City order or the global gag rule by saying that U.S. funding can't go to international organizations that do anything regarding abortion. That was instituted by Reagan and George W. Bush's. Clinton and Obama revoked it. He's putting it back in place. It's all very classic Republican stuff so far.
Important, and we can put up for our viewers there these 3 orders if you want to see them on the screen just to think about it. But on that last point, I think the trade issue is certainly going to be a defining issue for this president. A ban on federal hiring very traditional for a Republican president. It exempts the Defense Department. The military can go forward there. But the Mexico City policy, if you do remember the Reagan days, it is not so significant if you think it's a Republican president, but it is to a degree an early test because remember, if we went back a decade, Donald Trump was completely pro-choice. And he said he changed his view, but Republicans weren't sure, especially cultural conservative Republicans weren't sure as president would he actually stick to this. And we see the Mexico City policy today. We have a Supreme Court fight coming up. We have other Planned Parenthood funding in the budget there. So it is that part of it. The trade stuff's not very conservative, but that part of it is conservative.
I think the Mexico City thing was basically a no-brainer on the part of Trump. But I do think that it's largely symbolic. It really doesn't have the I mean, let's face it, the big show is going to be the Supreme Court.
And whether I think also the Planned Parenthood funding, because some Republicans are squishy on that. Will they get a push from the president, or will they get the sense that the president's with them?
And one other thing that he said this morning that it will obviously cause some concerns on the Hill from his party was talking about a border tax, instituting a border tax on these companies that ship jobs overseas. That's something that when he initially talked about that right after the election, Republicans were running away from that. The majority leader of the House, Kevin McCarthy, warned that it could start a trade war. Paul Ryan started to push, distance himself from that, saying, well, we're going to worry about doing this in a larger tax reform bill. But Trump today made it very clear that he wants to go that route. And as president, you do have fairly wide latitude to impose tariffs. Does he actually carry through with some of those threats? And I agree with Karen. I think a lot of this stuff is symbolic, like his executive order on Obamacare. Like TPP, we knew it was dead, but it was a symbolic move. But when we start getting into the details of the legislative push on Obamacare, on a Supreme Court nominee, and on doing things like the tariff, that's when things will start to really heat up.
And he hasn't taken any dramatic steps with his own pen so far. Remember, there was talk of today might be the day that he starts moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. At least as of this hour, it hasn't happened. It may not happen today. Right. And we haven't seen any action regarding deferred action for childhood arrivals, the immigration policy that he said he would like to undo. There's been a lot of nervousness among Republicans, and there's legislation ready to cover those kids up on the Hill that might move quickly should he decide to step in and do that.
But on the deferred action for childhood arrivals, I mean, he's been sort of ambiguous. He's spoken on both sides of that issue.
Right.
Yeah. It was interesting to hear Priebus suggest yesterday that they may not do that through an executive action. Perhaps he suggested part of a larger immigration effort. I'm sure that would upset some elements of his base who expected him to take a pretty hard line on that issue.
Well, it's a great point.